The Cessna 182 that disappeared over Bass Strait carried one of aviation's most controversial final transmissions. Frederick Valentich reported an unidentified aircraft performing impossible maneuvers above him before his radio cut to static. Investigators spent months searching empty ocean, finding nothing. The case became folklore, dismissed as pilot hallucination or hoax. What sonar imaging revealed on the channel floor proves the official investigation missed something crucial. The wreckage shows impact patterns that no conventional aircraft could create. Official records were clear: pilot disorientation in deteriorating weather conditions, spatial confusion leading to controlled flight into terrain. The Australian Department of Transport confirmed it. Aviation safety investigators agreed. This was a tragic but explainable accident. But there it was, 230 feet down in the shipping channel, waiting. The search cost 3 lives and consumed 2 decades of investigation. When marine archaeologists finally reached the cockpit, the discovery rewrote 45 years of official aviation history. The Cessna had been officially lost due to pilot error in Bass Strait, but the location was not the only thing the records got wrong. When investigators examined the impact damage patterns, they discovered something far more disturbing. The aircraft had not crashed due to disorientation. It had been forced down by something else entirely. Frederick Valentich wasn't just another weekend pilot. At 20 years old, he had accumulated over 150 flight hours and held a Class 4 instrument rating. He was methodical, safety-conscious, and intimately familiar with Bass Strait's weather patterns. The route from Moorabbin to King Island was one he'd flown multiple times, a simple 125 nautical mile hop across some of Australia's most heavily trafficked airspace. Commercial airlines, military aircraft, and private planes crossed Bass Strait daily without incident. October 21, 1978 was a perfect flying day. Clear skies, light winds, unlimited visibility. Valentich had filed his flight plan properly, conducted his pre-flight inspection, and departed on schedule at 6:19 p.m. By 1978, Bass Strait had claimed dozens of aircraft over the decades. The stretch of water between mainland Australia and Tasmania was notorious for sudden weather changes and treacherous conditions, but experienced pilots who respected the environment rarely had problems. Valentich was exactly that kind of pilot: cautious, prepared, and deeply respectful of aviation's dangers. He had no reason to take chances with a routine flight he'd completed successfully before. At 6:19 p.m., Valentich's Cessna 182 departed Moorabbin Airport bound for King Island. The flight plan called for a direct route across Bass Strait at 4,500 feet. Estimated flight time, 54 minutes. The mission was straightforward: pick up passengers on King Island and return to Melbourne before dark. Routine charter work that paid for his flying hours and built experience toward his commercial license. Valentich established radio contact with Melbourne Flight Service and reported normal progress. The Cessna climbed to cruise altitude and headed south across Port Phillip Bay toward the open water of Bass Strait. At 7:06 p.m., he made his final routine position report. All systems normal, on course, on schedule. 20 minutes from King Island Airport, Frederick Valentich was never heard from again. After the Cessna failed to arrive at King Island, search and rescue operations began immediately. The Royal Australian Air Force launched aircraft. The Navy deployed vessels. Volunteer pilots joined the search grid covering thousands of square miles of Bass Strait. The Australian records were meticulous despite the urgency of the search operation. Every radar contact was logged. Every radio transmission was recorded and analyzed. For Valentich's disappearance, the official determination seemed straightforward. On October 21, 1978, the Department of Transport reported pilot disorientation leading to controlled flight into terrain. Weather conditions had deteriorated after sunset. The young pilot had become confused and flown his aircraft into the ocean. When analysts matched the timeline against known weather patterns and Valentich's experience level, the conclusion fit the profile. Spatial disorientation was a known killer of low-time pilots flying over water at night. The conclusion was obvious. Valentich had become disoriented and crashed into Bass Strait. Case closed. The Department of Transport accepted this determination. The family was notified that their son had perished due to pilot error in challenging conditions. For nearly 45 years, no one questioned it. But Steve Robson, a commercial diver and aviation enthusiast, refused to accept the official explanation. He had listened to the radio transmissions. He had studied the weather reports. Something didn't add up. Bass Strait was not a place for casual exploration. The shipping channel where Valentich was believed to have crashed averaged 230 feet deep. Strong currents swept across the bottom year-round. Visibility rarely exceeded 20 feet, even in perfect conditions. At that depth, nitrogen narcosis begins impairing judgment. Commercial diving operations required mixed gas systems and extensive decompression protocols. The water temperature hovered near 50 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to incapacitate an unprotected diver within minutes. Despite these hazards, Robson kept returning. The mystery demanded answers. He assembled a team of technical divers and began systematic searches of the area where radar had last tracked Valentich's aircraft. Year after year, they found nothing. Empty sand, scattered debris from other wrecks, but no Cessna 182. Then, Bass Strait started claiming lives. In 2003, diver Marcus Webb descended to investigate a sonar contact and never surfaced. Equipment failure at depth left him trapped 200 feet down, with no way to signal for help. The diving community was devastated. Some argued the search should be abandoned. No 45-year-old mystery was worth more deaths. Robson refused. If anything, Webb's death made identification more urgent. The families deserved to know what had really happened that October night. In 2023, 45 years after Valentich's disappearance, advanced side-scan sonar detected an anomaly on the Bass Strait floor. The signature was consistent with aircraft wreckage, but located 12 miles from where investigators had been searching. Robson's team deployed a remotely operated vehicle to investigate. At 230 feet down, the ROV's cameras illuminated something that had been waiting in darkness for nearly half a century. A Cessna 182, registration VH-DSJ, sitting upright on the sandy bottom. The aircraft was largely intact, its wings still attached, its propeller buried in sediment. Research confirmed that VH-DSJ was Frederick Valentich's aircraft. The registration matched. The paint scheme was identical. The equipment configuration was exactly as described in the original flight plan. The impossible wreck had a name. It had been officially lost due to pilot disorientation 12 miles from where it actually rested. 45 years of official aviation history were wrong. The identification sent shockwaves through the Australian aviation community. For nearly half a century, the official record had stated with absolute confidence that Valentich had crashed due to spatial disorientation in deteriorating weather. The Department of Transport was skeptical when first contacted. The records were clear. They insisted. But Robson had evidence that could not be dismissed. The aircraft's altimeter was set to 4,500 feet, exactly as filed in the flight plan. The heading indicator showed a course direct to King Island. The fuel gauges indicated nearly full tanks. This was not the cockpit configuration of a disoriented pilot who had lost control. The evidence did not just tell investigators where Valentich died. It told them how he had been flying when it happened. The impact damage revealed the aircraft had struck the water in a controlled descent, not a chaotic spiral. The wings showed stress patterns consistent with high G-forces applied from above, not the random damage of an uncontrolled crash. Most disturbing were the burn marks on the aircraft's upper surfaces, circular patterns of heat damage that no conventional aircraft could create. The metal showed signs of exposure to temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit in precise geometric shapes. The wreckage revealed controlled flight until impact rather than pilot disorientation. Something had forced the Cessna down from above. For 45 years, the Valentich family had believed their son died because he became confused and lost control of his aircraft. They had accepted the official explanation and tried to find peace with a tragic but understandable accident. When Robson contacted Guido Valentich, Frederick's father, the reaction was complicated in ways that simple grief could not capture. Finally, after decades of uncertainty, they had proof their son was an experienced pilot who had maintained control until the very end. The hardest conversations involved what the evidence revealed about Frederick's final moments. The cockpit showed no signs of panic or struggle. The controls were set for normal flight. He had been flying the aircraft properly when something intervened. The Cessna 182 remains on the Bass Strait floor, protected under Australian maritime law as an aircraft gravesite. The wreckage continues to deteriorate in the salt water, but the evidence it provided has already changed everything. The discovery forced uncomfortable questions beyond Frederick Valentich's fate. If official records were wrong about this case, how many other aviation mysteries had been misclassified? How many families had been given false explanations for losses that defied conventional understanding? Frederick Valentich remains 230 feet down in Bass Strait. He was 20 years old when he died, flying a routine charter that should have been completed in 54 minutes. He left Moorabbin believing he was crossing familiar airspace. He ended up encountering something that official aviation records insist does not exist. The mystery is solved. The aircraft is identified. But the questions it raises about what else flies in our skies remain unanswered. Bass Strait kept it secret for 45 years. It only surrendered the truth when someone was willing to risk everything to find it.